In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make the Florrie Tee pattern. This is a really good pattern if you've never made a garment before. It's super simple. We're going to make two rectangles and join them together, creating a neckline opening, an armhole opening, and then we're also going to add a couple of slits at the bottom, which is actually optional. This pattern is for free on my blog, so I'll leave a link in the description box below so that you can take a look at the different sizing for this pattern, and there'll also be a link to upgrade to the PDF pattern. I am using Lion brand Coboo, and this is the colour silver. I'm going to be using a 4mm crochet hook. You will also need a tape measure, pair of scissors and a darning needle for sewing in your ends. I also recommend either binding clips or stitch markers for when we come to piece our rectangles together. What I'm going to do is show you how to do the gauge swatch, and this will double up as your stitch practice and also the gauge swatch which you will need to do for the pattern, and then I'll go ahead and show you how to create your arm and your neck openings and piece everything together. Okay, let's get started. So as I say, I'm going to show you how to do your gauge swatch, and this will demonstrate the main stitch pattern, and this is something that you don't want to skip because you're going to use this to determine what hook size you're going to be using. I would suggest that you start with the recommended hook, which is a 4mm, and then you can adjust from there, and I'll give some explanation of how you can adjust if you need to. So we're going to go ahead and create our slip knot, and you can do this in whichever method you prefer. Go ahead and insert your crochet hook, and we're going to begin by chaining 28. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Go ahead and pause the video, work your 28 chains and meet me back once you're ready. So I've gone ahead and done my 28 chains for the gauge swatch, but you may have got more if you're actually working the pattern to the suggested chains for your size. And again, that link for the blog post is in the description box, and to the PDF pattern as well. So what we're going to do for the gauge swatch is work the pattern repeat, but this is also demonstrating the pattern overall as well. And we're going to be working into the back bumps of the chain. So as we're looking at the chain, we have our top loop and our bottom loop, and then if we turn around we can see the back bumps just here, also known as the spine of the chain. We're going to be working into the fourth chain from the hook, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we're going to work a treble crochet, which is known as a double crochet in the US. So we're going to yarn over, go into that fourth chain from the hook, yarn over, pull through, you'll have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, you'll have 2 loops on the hook, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. These skip chains do count as a stitch, so we now have 2 stitches. We're going to go ahead and work a treble crochet, US double crochet, in the back bump of each stitch or each chain all the way across. So go ahead, pause the video, work your stitches, and then meet me back once you're ready. So after working your stitches into your foundation chain for your gauge swatch, you will have 26 stitches. We'll then move on to row 2. So we're going to go ahead and chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This chain 3 counts as a treble crochet, which is single crochet in US terms. We're going to go ahead and do a treble crochet into that next stitch. And then we're going to start a pattern repeat. So we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, skip 2 stitches, and then do 1 treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And we're going to repeat that all the way across. Chain 2, skip 2 stitches, 1 treble crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And again, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, 1 treble crochet into the next stitch. You're going to repeat that all the way across until you reach the end. So pause the video and then meet me back once you're ready. So I'm nearly at the end of my row here. I'm just finishing off my pattern repeat, but I just wanted to point out that this final stitch is going to go into the top of that turning chain. So the chains that we missed at the beginning of the last row. So now we have our pattern repeat. You're starting with 2 treble crochets, you're ending with 2 treble crochets. So now let's go ahead and move on to row 3. We're going to chain 1, turn the work. This chain 1 does not count as a stitch here or throughout. And we're going to go ahead and start with a double crochet, which is a US single crochet, into the first 2 stitches. So insert the hook, yarn over, pull through. You'll have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. That's 1. And into the next stitch, that's 2. We then have a pattern repeat. So we're going to work 2 double crochets into this chain 2 space. So right into that chain 2 space. And then we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And that is our pattern repeat. So 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 and 2, and 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches. And you'll repeat that all the way across, ending with your last double crochet into the top of that chain 3 from the beginning of the last row. So go ahead, pause the video, work that pattern repeat, and then meet me back once you're ready. So we're now ready to move on to row 4, which is actually a repeat of row 2. So we're going to chain 3, turn our work, and then we're going to do 1 treble into the next stitch because this chain 3 counts as a stitch. Remember, treble in the US is known as a double crochet. And then we have our pattern repeat. So our pattern repeat is chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and then treble crochet into the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2. And what you should find is that those 2 stitches stack directly on top of the previous 2 treble crochets. So that is how we're creating that look. So 2 trebles, skip 2 stitches, and 2 trebles. It does get easier in this round because you have that visual cue of where your stitches are going to be, but do make sure that you do count your stitches. 2 trebles, miss 2 stitches, and work 2 trebles. Sorry, I said 2 trebles there, I meant 2 chains. So go ahead and work that pattern repeat. So chain 2, skip 2 stitches, 2 treble crochets all the way to the end. You'll end with your last stitch in this very first stitch just here. So we've now completed rows 1 to 4. We'll move on to row 5. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, it counts as a treble or a double crochet in US terms. And what we're going to do here is we're going to treble into that next stitch. And then we have a pattern repeat. So similar to the double crochet row that we did, we're just going to be using treble crochets in this row instead. So we're going to do 2 treble crochets into that chain 2 space, 1 and 2, and then 1 treble crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. So again, 2 treble crochets into that next stitch. This is the pattern repeat. So 2 treble crochets into the chain 2 space, and then 1 treble into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2, and repeat that all the way across, finishing with your last stitch in the top of the chain 3 from the previous row. So go ahead, work that all the way across, and then meet me back once you're ready. So we're now going to move on to row 6, which is actually the last row of the row pattern repeat that we're going to do. We're going to chain 3, turn our work, miss this first stitch because that chain 3 counts as a treble crochet, US double crochet, and treble crochet into the next stitch, and each stitch all the way across. So really easy row. So placing 1 treble crochet into each stitch all the way across. Go ahead, pause the video, work your stitches, and then meet me back once you're ready. So once you've completed row 6, you're then going to repeat rows 2 to 6. You're going to repeat the pattern repeat until you have 15 rows, and then you'll have completed your gauge swatch. However, if you're making your panels, so you're making your full-size panels, you can take a look at the patterns. You can see how many times you need to repeat the pattern repeat. So I'm going to go ahead and add to this gauge swatch now. Okay, so here is my gauge swatch. I have done the 15 rows of the pattern repeat, and I'm going to go ahead and fasten off and snip off, and remove my hook. And what I want to do now is I actually want to go ahead and lightly steam block this, because this is the way that we treat the pattern itself. So I'm going to go ahead and take my blocking board. I'm going to place it on here. I'm going to take my steamer, and without actually touching the fabric, I'm just going to steam over this, which will gently release the fibres, soften the fibres, and make it easier for blocking. And now that I've steamed that, I'm going to go ahead and take my pins. I'm going to place some in the corners, and then I'm going to just lightly bring that out. We want to be blocking to about 5.5 or 6 inches. So again, just lightly pulling that out. And then when we have all of our pins in place, we can go ahead and let that cool down and remove the pins, and then we can measure for our gauge. Okay, so I've blocked my swatch and I have taken out the pins, and now we're going to measure the stitches per 4 inch. So when you're measuring your stitches, it's really important that you are taking into consideration the gaps between the stitches as well. So we start at the beginning of a stitch, and then we end at the beginning of the next stitch. So you're not starting at the beginning of a stitch and ending at the end of the next stitch. You want to consider ending at the beginning of the next stitch. Those small gaps can make a huge difference. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 stitches over 4 inches. And then we're going to measure 4 inches in the rows. Now again, you want to consider where the top of this row is. So it's not down here in this gap. It's actually above, so we can see the top of the stitch just here. And then we want to go down all the way to the bottom of this row just here. So we have 1, 2, 3, don't forget to count the double crochet rows, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 rows. So that is what we should have, 10 rows and 18 stitches. I have some videos on how to correct your gauge. So I'll leave a link to that video just here and in the description box if you want to check that out. But essentially, if you have too few stitches, you can go up half a hook size or a hook size. And if you have too many stitches, then you can go down half a hook size or a hook size. So it's really important that you are getting this gauge swatch correct, because that is what's going to determine the size of your top, and you want to make sure you're getting it right at this point. So once you have done your gauge swatch, if you have now made your front and your back panel, you're now ready to join them together. So let's go ahead and see what we do for that. Before piecing together your rectangles, I recommend that you block them. I do this with steam blocking. And then you want to go ahead and lay your two rectangles together with the long tail ends facing outwards, so facing where the shoulder would be. You can, if you haven't got your long tail ends, just cut some additional yarn to use for this. We will then want to make sure that we're making our neck opening to your desired width. So I like to measure from the outside inwards so that I know that the neck opening is going to be central. Go ahead and use your binding clips or your stitch markers to place your two panels together and mark where you're going to be sewing up to. We're then going to take our tail ends or your additional yarn, however you've done it, and we're going to thread up our darning needle, and we are going to use whip stitch or your preferred seaming method to seam these two panels together. So working through both thicknesses, you're going to insert your darning needle through the tops of the stitches and then work your way from the shoulder inwards so that you're creating that seam on the shoulder. Just make sure that you're lining up stitch by stitch. Take your time with this. You spent so long doing your rectangles already. You want to make sure that you get this right and it sits really lovely and it matches up. So you're going to go through the front panel, through the top of the stitch, and then you're going to go through the corresponding stitch on the back panel. So when you first start this, you might find that when you're popping your needle through, all the long tail end gets a little bit tangled a little bit, but just take your time. I have a binding clip here on the edge, but I take that off after the first few stitches have been made. I'm just going to go ahead and just speed through this for now, but you can of course pause the video while you catch up. But after I have done one side, I go ahead and count the number of stitches that I have worked into to make sure that I can do the same number of stitches on the opposite side. The other thing that I do is I do not sew in my ends just yet. I just catch it with the binding clip because that makes it really easy if I change my mind and decide I want to alter the width of the neck opening. Once you've gone ahead and done both sides, you want to lift the center of the panel and fold it with the right side facing each other. So we've still got the wrong side facing outwards at the moment while we're seaming, and we're going to go ahead and measure for the armhole, and then we're also going to measure for the little gap that we're going to keep at the bottom of the top. And that just allows for sitting over your hips. If you want to go all the way down and seam all the way down, that is absolutely fine. I'm just going to line everything up, making sure that the stitch pattern is as it should be, so that when it gets seamed together, it lines up nicely. And I'm going to go ahead and measure the armhole. For me, this is around 9 inches, but obviously you can adapt that to however you like. And I would at this point recommend that you pop your binding clips on and then try it on just to see how it feels on you. So I'm leaving about 9 inches on the arm, and I do have recommendations for each of the sizes. And then on the bottom, just where it's going to fit over the hips, you want to be about 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to pop another binding clip down at the bottom, and then I know that when I'm seaming, I seam from one clip to the other. Once you're happy with this side, you're then going to do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Again, making sure everything lines up and you that have the same measurements as you have on the other side. And as I say, at this point, once you've got both of your clips on both sides, try it on for size and make sure that the armholes are how you like them to be. We're then going to go ahead and use the same seaming method as you have done before and work down the row ends of your stitches. I would recommend that you pop 2 stitches in the treble end rows, the row ends of the trebles, and then 1 stitch in the ends of the double rows. But just as long as you're working nice and neatly, you're checking to make sure that everything's lining up correctly. Just take your time with it and seam up from the hip seam or the hip opening right up to the base of your arm opening. And again, leave the tail ends, don't sew them in just yet. Try it on again after this and make sure that you're happy with the fit before we go on and do the finishing touches to the armholes and to the hip opening. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to work around the armholes. I have already done this one, and we're going to do a double crochet or 2 rounds of double crochet, which is US single crochet, and that's just to tidy up the edges, just to make them look a little bit neater. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the right side facing outwards, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch into the base of the armhole, into this seam. So you want to take your slip knot onto your hook. So here is the armhole, here is the top, the shoulder, and here is the side seam and the base of the armhole. We want to go ahead and join with a slip stitch around the base of the armhole. So join with a slip stitch. We're then going to chain 1, which does not count as a stitch, and we're going to be working along the row ends of the stitches that we've done. So we want to work evenly around, but as a general rule, we're going to work 2 double crochets into the treble rows, and then 1 double crochet into the double rows. So do 2 double crochets into this treble row here, 2 into here, 2 into here, but then 1 into this double crochet row just here. So we're going to go ahead and start with this first treble row, and we'll do double crochet, which is single crochet in the US, and double crochet, and then we have the end of the next row. We'll go double crochet, oops, double crochet and double crochet into the next row, double crochet and double crochet, and then we have a double crochet row, so we just do 1 double crochet in there, and we're going to continue to do that all the way around. Again, just trying to keep it as even as possible. Double crochet, and sometimes I work, see how we have this little section here, sometimes I work into that, and that's part of that treble crochet round. You can just see how it feels for you as you work your way around. This is a double crochet row, so we're going to just do 1 double crochet in there and continue to work your way all the way around. So you'll at one point you'll get to the shoulder seam, so I'll just work up to there so I can show you how we're going to work over the shoulder seam. So we're now at the shoulder seam here, and what we can do here is just simply miss the seam and then go straight over into that next treble crochet, and then do 2 double crochets into that treble, and then just work all the way around as you have been doing. 2 double crochets into the ends of the treble rounds and 1 double crochet into those double crochet rows. So go ahead, do that, work your way round until you reach your very first stitch, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now that you've worked your way all the way around, you're going to join with a slip stitch to finish that round, chain 1, and then work 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around. So really simple round, 1 double crochet into each stitch, and then meet me back in your last stitch and I'll show you how to finish off. So once you've worked your way around, we're going to find that first stitch and join with a slip stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then fasten off, and then pull out your hook, and you can go ahead and sew in any of those ends which are down the end. I've got a really long one here from sewing together, but you can go ahead and sew those in, and that is your finished armhole. Now that you've completed both of the armholes, we're then going to go ahead and just finish off the bottom section of your top. Now if you've left these gaps at the bottom, then we're just going to add a little bit of detail to this so that it neatens it up a little. So again, you're going to have your work facing right side out, and we're going to go ahead and insert our hook onto a slip knot. We're going to do 2 rounds, but we're going to do 2 separate rounds, so we're going to cut off after each round. So what we want to do is find this very first treble crochet. Rather than working into the edge of the stitch for this very first one, we're almost going to work into the chain, like the base of that treble crochet. So we have our loop on our hook, and we're going to do a standing double crochet, which is a standing treble crochet. Insert our hook into the chain, yarn over, pull through. We'll have 2 loops on a hook, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. So that will class as our first double crochet into the end of that treble round, and now we can work into that into the end of that treble row. So we have our 2 treble crochets, and then just like before, we're going to do 2 treble crochets into the row end of the next row. Then we have our double crochet row, so we're going to work 1 double crochet into there and just work all the way around. So continue to work your double crochets into your row ends, and then you will find yourself at the top of the opening. Go double crochet in here, the row end, 2 double crochets in this last one, and then we find ourselves at the seam. So we're just going to turn the work and then work double crochet all the way down. Just as you have done before. So go ahead, work your way to the end, and then meet me back once you're ready. Okay, so similar to the other side where we started, I'm going to finish with my last stitch in this bottom section here, just so that we're anchoring down that very last stitch. I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, pull through, snip off, and pull out our hook. And then we're going to go back to that very first stitch. And we do this so that the stitches sit the way that we want them to sit, and that we see this like little subtle detail at the bottom. We're going to work into the top of that very first stitch from the row that we've just made and slip stitch into there, and we're basically going to slip stitch all the way around. So slip stitch into each of the stitches, and what that does is it just gives us a really small little detail on the very front of our stitches, just to finish off this section. So go ahead, pause the video, work your way around. Remember to turn your work once you get to that seam. There'll be no need to miss the seam this time. You'll just go into each of the stitches around because we've already laid the foundations for this row. So go ahead and complete that. Once you've finished the row, you're going to fasten off and sew in all of your ends. I'm just at this section here now, so you can see I'm just slip stitching, slip stitch into the next stitch and into the next, and that just takes us around that corner seam. Okay, so go ahead and finish off your round and I'll meet you back in a moment. So once you've completed the openings on both sides and done your armholes, you are all finished. I would recommend that you just give it another block, especially on the arms, just so it's sitting lovely and beautifully. Don't forget to check the link in the description for the blog post for this top so that you can find it in the alternative sizes. But I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you like this video then you also might like this one right here.